Hello everybody, and welcome to the virtual classroom for UU of St. Petersburg's RE lesson for the Unicorn class. This one is for April the 5th, 2020. And I'm going to go ahead and light our chalice so we can get started. I have a battery operated chalice. I'm going to light it, put it back in. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I'm going to put this aside, and then we can go on and get started with our lesson. This month, the theme is liberation. Liberation means freedom. And sometimes liberation and freedom take time. This lesson we will explore the Jewish holiday of Passover, which falls between April the 8th and April the 16th. And we'll learn more about it through our story, meditation, and activity. But before we go on, let's look back at what we did last week. We were studying about the wisdom of our bodies. And I ask you each to make an outline of your hand and to decorate it. And there's the one that I made and decorated. But I still had a blank outline that I wanted to decorate. And so as I was decorating it, I'll show you what I came up with. Here's mine, my second one. As I was drawing the flowers on the hand, it made me think of how the germs of the coronavirus can get on our hands, and then we touch other things and other people, and the germs can get on them, and it can make a lot of people sick. So I thought we'd talk about how we can avoid that. We can't see those germs, and then we touch our eyes and our nose and our mouths, and the germs have a place to enter. And they'll be sitting around there on the computer keyboard or on the light switch, and you don't even know that you picked them up. And then you can hug your mom or your grandma or somebody else that you love, and those germs will jump right onto them, and they could get very sick. So we're going to do a little 20-second song that will help you to remember that washing your hands is the very most important thing that you can do right now. That and not touching your face or your eyes. And we'll talk about other things that you can do also when we get to the end of this lesson. So here's my little song that I made up. Turn on the water and wet your hands. Turn the water off, don't waste a drop. Squirt on the soap and start to rub. And sing this song. This is the way we wash our hands, wash our hands, wash our hands. This is the way we wash our hands to keep the germs away. Keep washing. This is the way we stop disease, be germ-free. Easy peas. This is the way we stop disease several times a day. Now rinse your hands real good. Dry them off as you should, and you can be on your way. Remember, don't touch your face. So that's my little song I made up. So if you're washing the whole time you're singing, then you're going to be washing for 20 seconds of just washing. Doesn't include turning on the water or turning the water off and drying. Just the washing. Make sure you get those germs off. So on with our lesson. And we said we were going to talk about liberation and the Jewish holiday of Passover. So as usual, we're going to start with the Wonder Box. If I can get my cursor to Here is the Wonder Box. I wonder what's in here that could help us talk about the theme of liberation and Passover and how the Hebrew people, that's what they called the Jewish people back then, how they escaped from slavery in Egypt. Well, let's see what's in here. Aha! It's a frog. A frog. Well, in the story we're going to tell, there were frogs in the story. Let me put this box aside. Frogs were one of the things that came down upon Egypt in plague form. Lots of things happened. Let's see. The God of the Hebrew people, whom they called Yahweh, sent plagues down upon Egypt, plagues of wild beasts and blood and lice and cattle diseases and boils, hail from the sky, locusts, which are these animals that eat up all your crop, little insects like grasshoppers, and the worst of all was the slaying of the firstborn. That means they killed the firstborn baby in a family. Passover also includes a meal called the Seder, and it has special foods, and there's always a story about how the Hebrew people escaped from slavery. The story of Exodus is a story which shows us how people got liberated together. All of the Hebrews fled their enslavement in Egypt. And it also shows us that liberation takes time. Moses, who was a spokesman for the Hebrew people, had to convince Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the king of Egypt at that time, to let the Hebrews go, to liberate them so they could go live their own lives instead of being slaves. But it took 10 plagues of all those horrible things like lice and disease to convince the Pharaoh. And once they were set free, it took them 40 years of wandering in the desert looking for a place called the Promised Land. Another part of the story talks about a miracle. When the Hebrews came to the edge of the Red Sea, they were very afraid because the Egyptian soldiers were right behind them. The Pharaoh changed his mind and wanted to take them all back and make them slaves again. But their God, Yahweh, helped them to part the Red Sea, made a path so that the sea waters went apart and they could walk right in between the water. Can you imagine that happening? So the people who were called the Israelites at that time, they were able to escape by walking between the waters of the Red Sea. So we're going to imagine what that might be like when they walked through the Red Sea and got to the other side where it was dry land. So find yourself a comfortable spot because we're going to do a guided meditation. And you're going to go there in your mind. So get all comfortable. And we're going to do some slow, focused breathing. So inhale. And exhale. Listen to your breath. Inhale. And exhale. Go into your mind and listen for the sound of that ancient sea and what it might have been like to be one of the Israelites who was escaping from Egypt. Listen with that part of your breath that remembers what it was like to be escaping from Egypt. Listen as you hear the waters move apart. Hear the echoing in your mind of your people as they saw this miracle happen, as they realized that they would soon be free. Listen with your innermost ear as you inhale and exhale. Turn your eyes inward so you're looking with your innermost eyes and listening with your innermost ears. And look down like you're on top of a tall pillar of clouds that's guiding you out of Egypt. Look at the colors of the clouds and feel the hope and the promise that bubbles up from your soul as you move towards freedom. Now allow the inside of your eyes to slide down that tall pillar of clouds, down, down, until you reach the horizon. And notice that your people are moving with you in a large mass. Feel yourself moving towards the sea in that ocean of Israelite people. Are you leading some child by the hand? Or are you a child yourself? Are you wondering, is there work to be done today as a slave? Are there no bricks to be made or to be moved? No taskmaster with whips to make you work? Listen, in the distance, you can hear the dim clatter of spears and shields. Oh no, you can hear horses coming up behind you and the rumble of hooves and the chariot wheels on the ground. You can hear the whinny of the horses and the commands barked out by the soldier to stop and to follow you. Oh no, there's an army coming up behind you. You feel yourself and your people approaching the sea, and you inhale. You can smell the salt. You can feel the watery sea right there. You can feel the sand underneath your toes. Listen, maybe you can hear the sheep that followed you, that you're taking with you. Maybe you can hear children crying out, "Mommy, Daddy, what's happening? Where are we going? What will happen to us?" And you can hear the familiar voices of people you know and love as you move towards the sea that lies ahead. And the chariot's wheels are coming closer behind you. The wind is picking up, and from behind you, you can see hair flying and white caps on the sea. Now look, Moses is holding out his hands, and God is making the seas part and split apart. And then we're all running and praising God. Oh, thank you, Yahweh. You're saving us from whatever is behind them. We don't even know if we'll be caught or if we'll be free. This is real. So we are running and we're being pushed by our people from behind, and we're being pulled from our people from in front of us. And it's real. We're going in between the walls of the sea, and even the children and the animals are escaping between the walls of water. Now we're halfway across, and we can see water and sand stretching out in front of us. And finally we make it to dry land. Wow! What a feeling of excitement and exhilaration. Woohoo! Can you experience this feeling? And even if we were to drown, it would still be better than being slaves in Egypt. But now we see the chariots. They're down between the walls of water, and we hear the scraping and the groaning. Oh, The walls of water are closing down upon the chariots and the soldiers. They can no longer follow us, for they are underneath the sea. Oh, we're so excited. We're sad that those soldiers had to die, but we are singing now because we are free. And we take out our musical instruments and we sing and we dance. And while we have nothing but song and dance, we have a grand celebration because we are on our way to freedom. Feel the feeling of freedom. Now, if you want to hear the song that they would have been singing, I put a link down below to a song called Hava Nagila. You may have heard it before, and you can see how the children might have been dancing at that very time of their liberation. So now I'm going to move on to tell you a story. There's a famous story called Exodus, and it's a long story. So I put a link below that you can go online and you can listen to someone else tell that story. But I'm going to tell you the story of Miriam and the Passover. Miriam's people would face many hard years of wandering in the desert before they could find a place to settle down and build their own community. This is a very famous old story, and if you'd like to read it, I put a link below, and I also put a link where you can watch a short video. And don't forget, if you choose to watch the videos, you can click down at the bottom on the CC. It'd be down at the lower right hand of the video screen, and that turns on closed caption so that you can read along with them. Here comes the story. It is said that for many years Hebrew people were slaves in Egypt. A slave worked so hard for no pay. They had to do what they were told, and there was no way that they could change their situation. They were owned by the Pharaoh, who was the king in Egypt at that time. And there was a horrible thing that was going on back then. There was a young girl named Miriam, and she and her mother and father and brothers and sisters were all slaves. The Hebrew people were not happy being slaves, but they didn't know what to do about it. They thought to escape would be impossible. It would happen soon that Miriam's family would be right in the middle of it. The king of Egypt, called the Pharaoh, was getting worried about the Hebrew slaves. He needed their hard work as builders and farmers and to do things for the Egyptian people. He wanted them to keep working for free. He was afraid that the Hebrews might try to escape. He was especially worried about the young Hebrew boys. Soon enough, they would grow up to be strong men who could fight for their people's freedom. The Pharaoh made a terrible rule that all the baby boys must be killed. He sent Egyptian soldiers to the slaves' homes near the river to take the baby boys away from them. Around this time, Miriam's mother gave birth to a baby boy. Miriam's mother was very afraid because she wanted to protect her son. She didn't want him to be killed. So she wove a basket out of some grass, and she carefully placed the baby boy inside it, and she set him to floating down the river. Wow, what a thing to have to do. Maybe someone kind, an Egyptian, would find the basket and discover the baby boy inside, and maybe that person would take them into their home and raise him up where he could be safe. It was so hard to let go of that baby boy, but it seemed the only way to save his life. Miriam was frightened too, seeing her mother do this. She watched as her little baby brother floated along. His basket was hidden in the long reeds, which are grasses that poked up from inside the water. Miriam tried to act as if nothing was wrong, if nothing strange was going on. If an Egyptian soldier walked by and saw her, she had to be very silent and pretend that she was just a slave doing what she was supposed to do. Miriam saw some women down in the water up ahead, washing their clothes. Her brother's basket was floating right towards them. Miriam crept closer and watched as the Pharaoh's own daughter was there with her maids, found the basket floating by. "Look, a baby!" she cried. "How lovingly someone has wrapped him up! This must be a little Hebrew boy." Miriam was sure the Pharaoh's daughter would pick up her little brother and deliver him to the Egyptian soldiers to be killed, but that's not what happened. "What a beautiful baby boy!" the princess cried. "All the Hebrew baby boys are supposed to be killed," another one said. "I don't care," said the Pharaoh's daughter. She picked up Miriam's brother and held him in her arms. Miriam had a brave idea. She stepped towards the group of Egyptian women. "I can find a Hebrew woman to take care of this baby for you," she said. Of course, she was thinking of her own mother. Pharaoh's daughter thought Miriam's idea was a good one. She sent Miriam to get a Hebrew nursemaid to give the baby milk. Miriam ran back and got her very own mother. That's how Miriam's baby brother survived the Pharaoh's terrible rule and got to live with his own family, at least for a little while. When Miriam's brother was beginning to walk and talk, the Pharaoh's daughter took him back again. She named him Moses, and he grew up in the Pharaoh's palace as an Egyptian prince. Miriam, too, was growing up. She would see her brother from time to time. She believed he remembered her. She believed he knew he really was a Hebrew, but she couldn't be sure of that. Miriam's family lost track of Moses for some years. Moses had killed an Egyptian who was beating a Hebrew slave. Then he ran away from Egypt and became a sheep herder, and he got married. One day, Moses saw a bush on fire, which he understood to bring a message from God to the Hebrew people. The message let Moses know that he was not an Egyptian prince, but a Hebrew man whose family were its slaves. A Hebrew with a special duty to return to Egypt and lead the Hebrew people out of slavery to find a new home where they would be free. Moses returned to Egypt. His adopted grandfather, the old Pharaoh, had died. Moses asked the new Pharaoh for the Hebrews' freedom, but the new Pharaoh refused. Moses asked again and again, and the Pharaoh still refused. Then a series of disasters occurred. A disease killed all the Egyptians' cattle. Frogs rained down from the sky. Swarms of locusts, which are insects like grasshoppers, ate all the Egyptians' crops. Finally, Pharaoh changed his mind. He wanted the Hebrews gone. Miriam and her family rushed to pack up. They hurried before the Pharaoh changed his mind again. Sure enough, as they gathered up their belongings, the Pharaoh did change his mind. The Hebrews left Egypt, the children, the women, and the men, with the Egyptian soldiers following right behind them. Miriam had helped to rescue her brother when he was a baby. Now, with her brother Moses and Aaron, her other brother, she would help rescue the Hebrew people and the other slaves from the hard life in Egypt. At this moment of great fear, she had faith that the Hebrews could escape. With Moses and Aaron, she led the others, keeping steps ahead of the Egyptians. When they came to the large sea, the Red Sea, the Hebrews bravely crossed the water, finding to their great surprise a dry path leading right through it. As the Egyptians came through after them, the dry path became covered in water, and the Egyptians could not reach the Hebrews on the other side. Miriam's people would face many hard years of wandering before they could make their own community in a stable place. There would be many challenges ahead, but they kept believing they would find a new home, and from each disaster they bounced back. After the Hebrews crossed the Red Sea, leaving Egypt and slavery forever, Miriam lifted a tambourine high in the air and led the people in song and dance. Yes, it was uncertain how the future would unfold and what terrible things they had left behind them. There was great joy to feel now and great feelings of gratitude. So click on the song link below if you want to hear Hava Nagila and see how they might have danced to it. And for our last activity, I'm going to tell you some things that will help keep us safe from the things that are happening to us right now, which is the coronavirus, kind of like when the frogs rained down from the sky on the Egyptians. But there are things we can do to stay safe. So number one, you already know. If you have to cough or sneeze, do it in the crook of your elbow, like this, and turn your head away from the people like this. So if any germs escape from your elbow, they won't go on the people. So the next thing you can do is the 20-second hand washing song that I taught you earlier. And do that before eating and after touching anything that might be germy, like a door handle or a light switch, or if you go out to a store or somewhere, be sure to wash your hands immediately when you get back home. And even in the car, use hand sanitizer and get your hands really clean and kill those germs, because we want to get back together again real soon, face to face and in person. So remember all the things from our lesson, and I hope you have a really awesome week. I'm going to extinguish our chalice. Bye. See you next week. Miss you.